I'm a little perplexed by the obsession of where disclosure comes from, as if that really matters. The idea that somehow we're going to get this clean disclosure that can't be corrupted by government or interests if it comes from the people doesn't really hold up under scrutiny. Even if it were to come from someone like Jake Barber or the phenomenon itself through a mass sighting, the US government, other governments, special interests, and other powerful entities would still chime in. They would still give us their perspective. They may still lie to us every bit as much as if they were the origin of disclosure itself. So I don't quite understand this big concern that we must get disclosure in any way, shape, or form but from government, as if the equation really changes. But does it? I don't think it does. And I think this obsession or misguided preoccupation misses the point that regardless of where disclosure comes from, it's still our disclosure, in that we get to do with it whatever we want to do with it. We get to be vigilant. We get to use our personal autonomy to ascertain what is true and what is false, what we think is plausible or implausible, what we think is manipulative or more likely to be true. Furthermore, after disclosure, that's when all our institutions are going to get involved. So no one's really going to own the narrative. Every government is going to have a say. Every scientific institution is going to have a say. Every religious leader is going to have a say. It will be a process of discovery, and nobody is going to be forced to believe anything or to accept anything. And when you take that into consideration, it becomes much more clear to me that this caution that we need to get disclosure, but it shouldn't come from the government, it sounds good at first glance, but if you dig a little deeper, to me it's meaningless, because it's not going to change the equation. Governments are going to chime in on UFOs regardless of whether it comes from people doing CE5 or not. And people that want to manipulate others into believing a certain narrative, they're going to be present. They're going to be there. They're going to be present and motivated and engaged in the conversation, independent of what triggers disclosure. So this would be my suggestion. Instead of getting preoccupied or overly concerned on where disclosure comes from, take personal responsibility once it finally happens to allow your voice to be heard so that you can influence the conversation and that you don't take a passive participation when the great shift occurs. Because after all, you can't have it both ways. You can't affirm that we need to bypass the government because we have personal power, sovereignty, agency, and relationship with the universe at large, while simultaneously conveying none of that holds up if the government discloses. That, to me, doesn't hold up. That is a contradiction. If we are so powerful, then that power remains fully intact, whether the US government or another government discloses, or whether people doing CE5 disclose, or whether the phenomenon itself discloses. The power of disclosure, at the end of the day, is that the people own it, no matter where it comes from. But if we don't get disclosure, if we don't have that shift, we stay stagnant, and UFOs remains on the fringe, where there's a lot of sincere, bright people writing amazing books and documentaries. There's a few scientific investigation outfits in the world, but UFOs remains like Sasquatch or the Loch Ness Monster, or leprechauns? Where is the shift? Why would you want the UFO subject to stay within that category? Wouldn't you want, assuming that non-human intelligence really is engaging our world, that UFOs becomes a fact in the same way that water boils at 212 is a fact, or that lightning exists, or any other scientific reality that we grapple with in a way that is beyond hypothesis or speculation or theorizing. Because we're not going to have that shift without smoking gun evidence. It really is that simple. I hope you enjoyed this very quick discussion. I might do more of these. I wish you all the best.